Hey, how are you doing? The primary mission for Japan to overcome and complete after World War II was how Japan could revive the Japanese economic back that was devastated by war. And having said that, primarily reconstructing Japanese devastated economy at the time was led by GHQ invading Japan. And GHQ uniquely proceeded with Japanese economic reforms and reconstruction and provided funds for life rebuilding for Japanese nationals and industrial recovery. And specifically, they promoted farmlands reformation and dissolution of Zaibatsu, which is a large group of Japanese large companies that mostly controlled a large part of Japanese economy, and establishment and support of labor unions in order to encourage Japanese people to establish in the small and medium-sized businesses around Japan for activation of Japanese economy. So in farmland reformation, they allocated farmlands to individual small tenant farmers that was originally dominated by landowners. And this attempt contributed to enhancement of individual tenant farmers' living standards. And the measure of dissolution of Zaibatsu promoted Japan's economic democratization that became the trigger for giving birth to explosive amounts of small and medium-sized businesses around Japan, and establishment and support of labor unions played a very important role to guarantee living standard of general workers in Japan. So after that, in the track of GHQ's Japanese economic reforms, the Japanese government independently came to proceed with reconstruction policy of Japanese devastated economy for the first time. So in this period of time, hyperinflation happened in Japan, and because the government issued huge amount of reconstruction financing bonds for the purpose of collecting money for economic reforms, right? So in order to overcome this situation, an envoy of the United States was dispatched from the United States, and he came to Japan and took initiative to go through the hardline policies, including fiscal austerities, and somehow hyperinflation was settled down. But in the results, on the other hand, this hardline policies brought about a number of Japanese companies' bankruptcy one after another, and which finally invited serious economic recession called the fear of stability. So, like this, Japan challenged a number of economic reconstruction and reforms after World War II while going back and forth and trials and errors. And at the time of Korean War, Japanese economy turned booming economy thanks to very special demand from the United States. So this is what we call Korean War special procurement. So this is said to be the start of high economic growth period in Japan. The period of high economic growth in Japan was from 1955 and 1973. The Japanese economy kept growing by averagely 10% every year, and the most outstanding change in this period in Japan was innovation. The automobile industry and electronic machinery industry and chemical industry and shipbuilding industry took in very innovative technologies and brand new facilities, and companies in these industries steadily expanded year by year domestically. And moreover, consumer durables, refrigerator, laundry machine, and black and white color TV were called three sacred treasures that pushed the demand of home appliances in Japanese society. So gradually, Japanese people's lifestyle was getting rich and was getting close to the one with material rich, which was already realized in the U.S. society at the time. So Japanese people at the time always dreamed of the lifestyle that the people in the United States had. And the steel industry was the one that forecasted the movement and demand of other industries about manufacturing facility investment, along with expansion of market scale. And steel companies proceeded with enhanced establishment of large iron mill and increased the steel production. And at the same time, they improved enhancement of effectivity and productivity of steel production, whose momentum overwhelmed the major economic powers in the world, including the United States at the time. So in this way, it continues good economic circulation that investment generated a synergetic effect that ended up improving productivity of other individual industries and increasing employments in Japan. So small and medium-sized factories and manufacturers that made the very small parts that were indispensable to car manufacturing and home appliance manufacturing were also significantly growing on the wave of high economic growth period. And in addition to that, Japanese companies possibly introduced cutting-edge labor management system and quality management system that were mostly used in the economic power at the time in the world. So thanks to this attempt, the development and manufacturing system that enables them to produce industrial products steadily in large quantity was organized. The financial industry also played a very important role to support companies that kept growing on the wave of high economic growth periods. So at that time, the Japanese government took low-interest monetary policy, and major companies received corporate loans from Japanese banks prior to investing money to brand new facilities. So there were also a lot of cases that a Bank Japan lent more money than corporate deposit amount without mortgage at the beginning. So in 1964, Tokyo Olympic Games was held in Tokyo, and in the previous year of Olympic Games, the Japanese government embarked on infrastructure development centered on Tokyo, and Tomei Highway that connects from Tokyo to Nagoya was open to traffic, and very first Japanese bullet train was open for service in this year. And these happenings pushed Japanese economy higher and higher. And in 1968, Japan's GNP became the second largest in the world, which was next to the United States. So this is the year when Japan was known as the one economic power in the world. While the manufacturing industry grew sharply on the wave of high economic growth period, growth of the distribution industry got a light start. And however, after that, even with slow growth, the distribution industry also stood out gradually in the Japanese economy. For example, Japanese supermarkets introduced a help yourself style and discount style. And help yourself style supermarket is like the current modern supermarket that we use every day on a daily basis. It's like the old product that we can see on shelves in the showcase are already priced, and the customer can walk around the store to find and choose the products with basket or shopping cart freely, and they pay money for collected products in a lump sum at a cashier installed before the entrance and exit of supermarkets. So this is help yourself style supermarkets. So until then, in the Japanese society, small private shops fulfill the role of supermarkets in Japan, and the products displayed shelves in front of shops was mostly asking price, and the shop owner picked up products indicated by customers one by one and put it in the bag and gave them product in exchange for money. And these small private shops were mostly scattered around the town separately by product category. So if you buy vegetables, you have to go to private shops, small private shops specialized in vegetables. And if you want to buy meat, you have to go to private shops that is specialized in meat. So you need to take time to find a very small private shops that sell the products that you want to buy. So it takes you a lot of time to find the product and to find the shops that is selling what you want to buy. So in the meantime, retail companies embarked on the management of a supermarket chain around Japan, and major supermarket companies made a large department style supermarket one after another, and temporarily sales revenue of supermarket exceed that of department store in Japan. And another type of retail shops, such as a home improvement store and shopping mall, appeared in reference to American retail industry. In this way, the secondary sector of the industry and tertiary sector of industry kept growing, but in the result, in the ratio of the primary sector of industry went down in comparison of other sector of industry, and the trend of overall industry structure dramatically changed. So, and energy resource shifted from coal to crude oil, and the coal energy industry headed for decline, and the Japanese manufacturing industry actively imported products to overseas. And in 1960s, trade liberalization that was allowed to liberalize capital transaction and foreign exchange deal gave new chances to Japanese manufacturing companies. And liberalization of capital transaction made it possible to transfer capital between countries, which easily made them realize intensified competition over international business between countries, so that Japanese companies concentrated on merger and acquisition and made large enterprises with sufficient power to confront intensified competition in the world. So Japanese companies at the time practiced very traditional Japanese style management with lifetime employment and seniority oriented system. This HR system was a prerequisite of long-term employment, brought the advantage that companies could do effective corporate management. They educated young workers to make them professionals player in an organization. And this is kind of like an ecosystem to educate young people, to make them professionals. So this is an ecosystem to take care of those young people until they become professional. And working for a long time that gave them a chance to get promoted with no condition worked really, really well to make them increase loyalty to a company that they belong to. So in this period, the Japanese style business management supported Japanese economic growth. The period of time for 17 years and 3 months, from December in 1973 to February in 1991, is said to be the stable economic growth period in Japan. And high economic growth period came to an end, and Japanese economy kept growing by averagely 5% every year, and the manufacturers of electronic products, car and semiconductor expanded overseas and concentrated on importation to foreign companies. So, but Japan's dramatic import growth collapsed the balance of import amount and export amount with a trading partner, and gradually this fact caused a trade friction between Japan and other Western countries. So in such a situation, there was a meeting among 5 advanced countries held in New York. At the time, the United States, with serious sense of crisis towards the progression of yen depreciation and dollar appreciation, reached a meeting of the minds of Japan, England, and West Germany and France about the decision to fix the exchange rate as an yen appreciation and dollar depreciation. And the meeting was held in Plaza Hotel in New York. So it is what we call Plaza Accord. So Plaza Accord gave a great impact on the international economy, and Japan faced a serious depression called strong yen recession, and import competitiveness of domestic manufacturers is dramatically went down in Japan. So one of the measures to break through this situation taken by the Japanese government was reduction of the offshore discount rate. The offshore discount rate is the basic interest rate that is applied when the Bank of Japan makes a loan to financial institutions. So at the time that the offshore discount rate became 2.5%, which was the lowest level after World War II in Japan, after separating reduction 5 times, right? So reduction of the offshore discount rate resulted in making companies fundraise easily. And in short, this measure is a great advantage that companies can easily receive a loan from banks. In fact, the number of companies that succeeded in business expansion through facility investment after receiving a loan dramatically increased in Japan. So, and this situation was one turning point that pushed the Japanese economy higher and higher. And moreover, the fact that not only domestic companies but also foreign investment funds, both Japanese stocks and real estate properties pushed asset value higher, and banks easily made a loan to people on the security of the price increase of the property, price increase of owned land, and the loan amount of financial institutions increased sharply, and the bubble economy happened in Japan. So, but very active economy stimulated by extreme investment for real estate and corporate stocks strongly appreciated beyond explanation. So, in December 29th, in 1989, Nikkei stock average hit all-time high record about 38,915 yen, and right after that it rapidly went down, and the overinflated bubble bursted all of a sudden in Japan. Japanese economy kept stagnating for over 20 years after bubble burst in 1991, and this period was called lost 20 years. And Japanese stock prices and land prices kept going down. That reached finally negative 1,200 trillion yen at the end of 1998. And companies that received a loan from banks fell into insolvency, and there were so many cases that banks weren't able to collect money back that they lent to companies. And conclusively, banks had so many loans to be paid back, and they weren't able to make new loans to other companies because they had no money. Therefore, the performance of Japanese financial institutions went worse and worse. And a part of major banks and the local financial institutions went bankruptcy one after another. And of course, there are a number of financial institutions that achieved great growth by coming through a financial crisis. These financial institutions survived with reorganizations and consolidation. And the number of city banks reduced from 13 to 4 due to reorganization and consolidation. And in 1998, government eased the regulation to establish a financial holding company. So this fact gave a birth to massive amount of financial holdings that held insurance and bank and financial security subsidiaries one after another. And in this way, some Japanese financial institutions somehow survived by supporting each other. And in addition, yen appreciation went forward after bubble burst, and distributing so many reasonable import products was one of the influence of yen appreciation at the time. And discount shops, including 100 coin shop, appeared one after another, and consumers who preferred to buy cheap products made by foreign manufacturers, and domestic manufacturers were forced to lower the price of the products and fell into financial difficulties. So during continuous economic stagnation in Japan, cost reduction was a big mission for any industries to revive the business performance back. So especially there were so many companies suffering from labor costs at the time, so they considered reviewing the employment system. And gradually they reduced the full-time position, and they proactively increased the temporary part-time position instead. So in contrast to that, unemployment rate dramatically increased year by year, and employment rate for full-time position was in depression as seriously as there was a buzzword, ice age of job searching, ice age of job finders, ice age of job hunters, or something like that. So gradually there was a movement that company abandoned the personal system of promotion of seniority and adopted the personal system of meritocracy for promotion in a Japanese society. So you need Japanese people's sense of value that they dedicate their whole life to a company that hired them after graduation from university started collapsing. After the last 20 years, gradually startups focusing on internet business that were out of the box stood out in the Japanese society. At the timing of turning 2000s, these small internet startups took power and dominated the Japanese economy before we knew it. So, not few startups became one of the listing companies very fast, only a couple years after establishment. And in the wake of success in the internet business, some startups proceeded with acquisition of Japanese traditional companies. So considering this situation with a new internet startups established one after another, and the tech industry newly rose in the Japanese society, we can't assume that last 20 years is negative heritage for Japan. The Japanese government took measures that pushed growth of other industries and other companies on the wave of the internet's booming economy. And deregulation of establishment of financial holding company is one example. And the government also prepared the base that people can easily establish a company, which is like originally in the Japanese conventional commercial law, you have to prepare 10 million yen beforehand to establish a company, but the government reformed and remanded a part of commercial law that allowed people to establish a company with no money when they start business in Japan. So, and also corporate merger was liberalized. So originally, a corporate merger was strictly regulated with Anti-Monopoly Act, but at the end of 1990s, this regulation was eased by the government, and the large-scale merger between companies was actively done from then. So spontaneous corporate custom like selling unprofitable business and buying growth business with good potential generated in the M&A markets in Japan. So this business circulation contributed to improvement and the reconstruction of financial status of Japanese companies. In April 2015, Nikkei average rate exceeded 20,000 yen for the first time after tech bubble economy in Japan. In the background, there was economy policy Abenomics announced by the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. As you know, Abenomics consisted of three primary political strategies called Three Arrows that aimed for sustainable growth of Japanese economy while easing regulation to private companies and private sectors in Japan. So last 20 years was a surely painful experiences for Japan. But looking back to the Japanese economy and looking back the history of Japan, somehow Japan survived the economic crisis no matter what period it was.